become his righteousness. He humbled himself and he carried the cross. Love so amazing, a love so amazing. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, the Lord of all. His body the bread, his blood the wine, broken and poured out, all for love. The whole earth trembled and the veil was torn. Love so amazing, a love so amazing. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, the Lord of all. All our hope is in you. All our hope is in you. All the glory to you, God, the light of the world, Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. Jesus Messiah, the Lord of all. The Lord of all. The Lord of all. And take a moment and greet those around you. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship your holy name. sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship your holy name. You're rich in love and you're slow to anger. Your name is great and your heart is kind. For all your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come. Still my soul will sing your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship your holy name. I'll worship your holy name. I'll worship your holy name. Higher than the mountains that I face, stronger than the power of the grave, constant in the trial and the change. There's one thing remains, one thing remains. and on and on and on and on it goes, as it overwhelms and satisfies my soul. And I never ever have to be afraid. This one thing remains. This one thing remains. Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love, your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love. Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest, and without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
Welcome to Thanksgiving weekend. What I'd like to do is see if some of you have some positive things you'd like to say that you're grateful for, either events that have happened to you or something you've learned this past year, or something that's going on in your life that you're just grateful for. I think it's really healthy as people to say thank you, not only to each other but also to God. For me, this has been a very fast week. I left you last week with our son in Newark and not able to get to Vermont. Actually, I don't even know if he was in Newark when I talked to you. He was in Savannah. Their plane was delayed. And they got to Newark, and then they couldn't get any further. So they were going to fly to Boston and then into Rutland, and that didn't work. So they rented a car, and they drove up from Newark. But this past week, because our boys are in different parts of the country, we try to gather them just to have a family gathering and have fun. And so everyone was able to be here, but they wouldn't be here at Christmas. So we had what we call a Thanksmas this past week. So we geared up all week coming into Wednesday. We had our Thanksgiving meal and did that. And then everyone went home except Dawn and I, and we converted the house to Christmas. And we had a tree and everything, so we decorated that and got up and going. So when they came back Thursday morning, it was Christmas. So we did all of that together, and it was, we didn't know if we could pull it off. It worked fine. And they all came, too, you know, it was kind of nice. But I think for me what was the best is making memories as a family. There's something about that that's pretty powerful. And now we have another generation of like grandchildren there. There's 4 of them in our house, and they are learning from their aunts and uncles and grandparents what is the meaning of these holidays that we celebrate and why. And, we talk about being grateful, and in our particular house, we pick names for the adults. And when you give the gift, it's a secret name, so the other person doesn't know. And so we say something about that person, describing them. And it's very meaningful because you think through what you're going to say. How can you give a 2-minute comment to that other person of gratefulness and who they are to you? And then you give them the gift. And so it's just that kind of thing. For me, it was a great week of fast, but a lot of things happening and making really good memories. And so I'm very grateful for that, for being able to have family together. So who else would like to say something? About their time right now. Diane? If you just give your name also, I think you can do that.
Hi, my name is Diane, and I just wanted to thank God, first of all, and then for my husband and for all of my church family, that this week I went back to cancer, and my number went down to 13.3, which has been the lowest ever. I have 1 more chemo, and I think we're going to be done for a little bit. So I'm very grateful for God, and then I did a CAT scan, and they decided that all of my organs were remarkably way better than they were in May. They've all healed. Everything's fine there. So praise Jesus.
Diane, what is it? What have you learned about God this year? I mean, this cancer thing is something that you can't fix, and what have you learned about God, or how to approach God, or what have you learned?
I've learned that God is awesome. He is true to what we all believe. He's has grace and a lot of faith. And when I cry now, it's like happy tears. Like, it's just fantastic. And you just don't know how God is working in your life, but there's a reason that He wants me to still stay here. So I just don't know what that is yet. But I'll tell you, there's nothing like the Lord. Nothing.
Thank you, dear.
Something rather interesting happened this past weekend for Jill and I to find out about. As many parents, we would get concerned about our children. And my daughter moved out to California this past summer. Jill's sisters live out in California, and they were out here and visited us just a little while ago. They were here. And we were hoping that they would maybe connect. Well, we got an email from my daughter here, or no, actually Jill's sister here the other day. Not only are my daughter is going to the same church as her daughter is going to, my son-in-law was playing backup guitar for her last Sunday for the Christmas service. It was just, we moved out there and we're thinking, okay, they got to make connections, new church family, and all this, and finding out family is right there in the same town that they're moving into.
Same church.
Same church, yeah. So we were thankful for that, to find out that they had that connection with her family out there, but, knowing that they're in a good place. Yeah, the town is actually about the same size or a little smaller than Brandon up here, so you get an idea how that works. It's just, there's like 2 churches in the entire town, kind of idea, and one of them's got about 50, 60 people in it, and that's the largest one, and that's where, she is.
And as a parent, you pray a lot, and you don't always know what's going to happen for your kids, so it's really awesome when something like that happens.
Yeah, the connection of God pulling things together. We as believers have a tendency to wring our hands a little bit about whether God's really in charge or not. He is.
My name is Edie, I'm sorry. I'm just excited about it. Amazing things happen to me. I really trust God things. I go back, happened to me. Every Sunday I give some money, offering. God is opens heart me. I looked at bank and it cost me. So I trust God and say everything's positive. I'm so very grateful, everything for me. So thank you.
It's nice to see a God that's faithful, you know, Edie? Yes. Anyone else?
No, my name is Carol Parker, and this past year I've learned that, that I believe in God, and that He has my best interests at heart. And there was one point where I knew He was going to take care of me, but I had it in my way. I had the list of how He was going to do things, and it didn't go that way, and I freaked out. I found that when I let go and let God, and know that whatever's happening, it's for my best interest. And He has blessed me financially. I mean, these things have just been happening, and I'm overwhelmed. I just, thank you doesn't seem enough. We don't have a word in our language that I can use to tell Him how thankful I am when I look around, and not just tangible things, my family. My son loves me. I wasn't a good mother, but he loves me. I'm a great grandmother, and I am. And, the kids love me, and it's just, I couldn't ask for more. I am satisfied. I'm around people, and they're making more money, and I was like, I gave a job away because I don't need it. It's too much, I'm overwhelmed, and it's all God. It's all God. See, you don't cry.
Gratefulness is an important standard to have, and I think we need to find the words. And I'm going to ask you to turn to John chapter 4. Let's study that together. Does anyone not have sermon notes? If they'd raise their hand, one of the ushers would be happy to give you. Could we have a couple of sermon notes here? What we do is I put it in visual format so that you can take it and ponder it when you get home and during the week. So we're walking through the Gospel of John. It's a wonderful book, and it basically has the gospel in it every time we speak. So just put your hand up, and Peter will get you a bulletin here. So, Peter, up here. Okay. So in the Gospel of John, it is actually my favorite chapter in the Gospel of John. It is a story about the woman at the well and how Jesus comes and interacts with her. And it's a fascinating study of how to talk with someone who's not a believer yet. And right now, we have Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, and it's all put together right in a neat package. And many of us will travel many miles or will be in a variety of different settings. And I want you to, as many of you are believers, is to be focused on what your mission is. Part of it is to, of course, just talk with people and be around them. But the other thing is to realize that God has put you in a setting where you can be a testimony for Jesus. And I want you to look for those opportunities and capture them so that God can speak through you and you be effective. Because this is something that I can't do for you because you're in settings that I'm not. And so this is all about you being effective for the King. And I want you to contemplate that. And we're either going to build bridges or build walls with this whole process. So you think about how you're going to do it and your process of that. What I have is the 4 points are BLTS, like bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich. Just think of it that way. That's how I do it. But there's 4 different comments that I'm going to make this morning about this particular text. And each one is a very specific action step that you can take with the friends around you to be an influence for Christ. So let's read John chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. The Pharisees heard that Jesus was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. When the Lord learned of this, he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of land Jacob had given his son Joseph. I'll pause there. So just a little geography lesson here. I have a worded map under this point, 3/4 of the way down the page. And here, just look up here for a minute. So if you look at a map of Israel, you have Judea is down here where Bethlehem and Jerusalem are down here. It's in the mountainous area of Israel. And then you have a place up here called Galilee, which is the Sea of Galilee and where Jesus kind of grew up as a boy. And over on this side, you have a big ocean or sea, the Mediterranean Sea. And then you have the Jordan River on this side. And Jesus is going to go from Judea to Galilee, to his home. And so there's this area in here called Samaria, and that's right in the middle. And what he does, good Jews would walk around this area. They'd either go up by the coastline and walk up by the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, or they would walk over by the Jordan River and walk up that way. They would not go through Samaria. And I'll talk about that in just a minute, why they wouldn't go through there. But Jesus is going to go right into Samaria for a reason. So the first bridge that you have to make if you're going to be an influence in your community and build a bridge there is, it's very simple, is you have to go where the people are. You have to go where the people are. Now, years ago, there was a man named Arnold Sharp who would come here, and he was a good friend of mine. He was an elder, actually, but he was a sportsman, and Arnold and I really enjoyed doing stuff together. He was also an expert builder, and did a number of things in my home. But we'd go fishing. There was a time where we went up on Lake Champlain, and he took me to some of his favorite spots to go catch fish, and we did, of course. So, but he would take me out there, and he'd say, now, here, fish here. And that's where the fish are, because they would be there. Now, I could have fished at home in my bathtub, gotten out the gear and put the worms in. But how many fish am I going to catch in my bathtub? 0, because there's no fish in my bathtub. So I can do the work, but not accomplish anything, or I can go where the fish are and fish there. And so hence, that's what we would do, and we would have a great time doing it. If you're going to be an influence for Christ, you have to go where the people are. You can't stay in your little holy huddle and be here. You have to go where they are. Jesus is going to go where the people are. Now, he's baptizing a lot of people. It says the crowds are coming to meet him. In John 3:26, we saw last week that all the crowds were coming. They were leaving John the Baptist, and they were coming to Jesus, and it says the whole world is coming to Jesus. That's how it kind of words it. And Jesus, interestingly enough, left all those crowds of people to go to one person. And that's fascinating to me as a leader and as a teacher myself, is you leave the whole, there was a successful ministry, and all these people were coming, and he was being effective here, and he left all that to go find one person. Now that's reminds you of what? It reminds you of the shepherd. Remember, he leaves the 99 and goes to find the one that's lost. That's what it kind of reminds me of as a shepherd. Jesus would go, and he went right into Samaria. Remember, we talked about this area where everyone else, all the other Jews, would go around it. And the reason is back in the history, there was a united kingdom under Saul, David, and Solomon. There was 40 years under each king, so there was 120 years of united kingdom where there was 12 tribes of Israel all together. But what happened is after I just said his name, Solomon, after Solomon, there was a split in the kingdom over taxes. And the 12 became 10 northern tribes and 2 southern tribes, and they split over taxes. And the leader of that was Jeroboam, and he was godless, and there ended up being 19 evil kings in the northern side and 20 kings in the south. There was 0 good kings in the north, and they led the people away from God. And it was not a good situation, and they worshiped false idols for hundreds of years, and there was warnings that came to them. And finally, in 722 AD, a great power up in the north called Assyria came down and took over the 10 northern tribes. And their way of approach of ruining the country was this, is they would handpick all the top leaders and the people groups that they wanted, and they would take them and they would pull them out of the country, and they would plant them in their country. And then they would take some of their people and transplant them down into where they had just come from. And what happened is those transplanted people intermarried with the Jewish people that were down there, and they became a non-fully Jewish country, the 10 northern tribes. And so the 2 tribes in the south, primarily Judah and Benjamin, they looked down on the people who were in the middle as kind of like not fully Jewish. And so they would disdain them. And they looked at them like, well, you're just dogs, you're half-breeds, you're worthless. And they wouldn't allow them to worship in the temple in Jerusalem. And there was a big issue. And so whenever they would go from one section of Israel to the other, they wouldn't even walk through Samaria because they looked down on those people as second-class citizens. And you look here, in verse 4, what does it say? I highlighted my Bible. It says this, now he, meaning Jesus, had to go through Samaria. The question is, did he have to go through Samaria? He didn't have to go through Samaria. He could have gone around like everyone else would, but he had to go. Why? Because he had an appointment. And I want you to think about that. Because if you see your life as a chance, just a chance meeting of all sorts of things, then I think you're missing God in it. But if you realize that your life has divine appointments from God himself, then you realize it's not by chance. There's a meaning and a mission. Now, this is really interesting because when stuff happens, it always seems to happen inappropriately or not at the right timing and things like that. And I would say, you know what? I think there is correct timing. And Jesus went where the people were. He had to go. Now, in your notes here at the bottom of the first page, it says, do you go to where the people are? And there's 2 kind of extremes. I've read in materials, they said after someone becomes a Christian, they come out of their culture of paganism, basically, and come to Christ. Basically, within 2 years, they have no non-Christian friends. They have Christian doctors, they have Christian this, Christian that, and they kind of subculture into a Christian culture. You got to think about it. Is that really the way it should be? And so what I said here is there's 2 different extremes. One is called a spiritual chameleon. Where they identify with the culture, they become like the culture, but they're no longer salt and light, and they lose their message. They just don't have a message now anymore. Why? Because they lost it. They became so much like the world that the world doesn't see any difference in their life, in what they say, how they act, what they do with their time, how they spend their money, where they go. They don't see any difference. And so they become like the world, but they're no longer salt and light. The second option is to become a spiritual porcupine where you're not involved in the culture at all. So you become so prickly and so isolated that you do everything in your Christian culture and you lose your audience. You have no connection there anymore. And so you got to ask yourself, what do I want to be here? Do I want to be either one of those? Or do I want to be salt and light? Because you don't want to become isolated or become so legalistic that it's all about rules and regs. then you'll lose your audience. Jesus chose to go right back to where the people were. So the first bridge was B stands for be where the people are. You got to be there. The second one is L, and that is you look for divine appointments. Now let's read verses 6 through 9. In this village of Sychar, verse 6, Jacob's well was there. And Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about the 6th hour. The 6th hour, the Jewish day starts at 6 a.m. and sunrise. So the 6th hour is right about noon, high noon. So it's in the heat of the day. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For the Jews did not associate with the Samaritans. So what I'm saying here is there's a lot of circumstantial things that are going on here. It's not good timing. There's a lot of things. I've written them in your notes here. The Jews looked down at the Samaritans as a mixed race. So when she looked at Jesus, she saw that he was a rabbi because he wore rabbinical clothes, and it was obviously he was a teacher and that kind of thing. She says, "You're a Jew, and I'm a Samaritan. Why would you talk to me?" Not only that, it was a man, and she was a woman, and in that culture, women were possessions. They didn't have equal rights with men. And so for a man to talk to a woman was unusual. She says, "What are you doing talking to me?" There was more problems we're going to see in just a minute where she was living in sin. And she knew it. And she thought, "Who is this man talking to me? Does he not know who I am?" It was a time of day when it was inconvenient. It was at noon. That's the time when no one would be traveling outside. From noon to about 3 o'clock, it was very hot in Israel, and they would not be traveling there normally unless you were a reject from society. That's when you did your business. And she went out to the well probably because she wasn't treated very good where she came from. And so she went out to get water by herself. It was inconvenient. Jesus says Jesus was tired. He had walked a long way, and he was now sitting down to get some rest. He was thirsty and hungry. And it says the disciples, he was all by himself, the disciples had gone into the village to get food. So a lot of those things don't add up to a great time to talk to somebody. But Jesus knew that he had to what? He had to go through Samaria, and he knew that he had to meet someone. And so he's waiting to see if this is the one. And it was. Now, when you walk through life, do you wait? When you have your devotions in the morning and when you read your Bible, do you say, "God, today is your day, and I'm waiting for you to have a divine appointment for me, because I will speak up. I don't know what the divine appointment's going to be. I don't know who it is. I don't know their situation, but I'm available." If you would do that, you would see amazing results. When Diane was sharing earlier about her cancer things, I know that Diane is an outspoken Christian, and she shares with medical staff what's going on in her world. And she thanks God for what is happening to her. She's not bitter, not angry. Diane, you're a great testimony, and we're very proud of you. These divine appointments are very interesting. Think about them in your life. I think of several. One of which is the pastor that mentored me. His name was Phil Spry. He was a live wire, actually. A military, he was a Navy guy, and he was very outspoken. He was funny, and he was a great, great storyteller. And I remember he said one time he was up they came from California, and he was up in the ridges of Northern California, and he was going to go to a meeting where he was getting some Bible lectures or something. And on the way, it snowed up there. And there was a young man who was stuck. He had summer tires and couldn't get anywhere, so Phil stopped his car. He was going to be now late to his meeting to talk with this young man and see if he could help him, and he did, and he helped do something to get him unstuck from where he was and back on his way. But in the middle of talking with this young man, the young man asked him what he did, and he said that he was a preacher and he was going to go to a seminar and whatnot. So the guy started asking him questions about his, how he became a Christian and how he knew what God wanted him to do. And Phil shared part of his life, and he said, if you want to pursue this, what I'd really suggest for you to is look into a school called Biola, which is in Southern California, and it's a great Bible school, and if you go there, you get some great training, and that's what I would suggest for you. And so he helped the guy, they shook hands, and they drove off. 4 years later, he gets a letter in the mail. And he looked at the address, and he says, I don't know who that is, and he rips it open. And it was a young man who had just finished 4 years of Bible school. And he said, because of that time that you and I talked, I realized God wanted me to go to that Biola college. I did. I just finished, and I chose preaching as my study. So I'm going to be a pastor. I wanted to let you know that your words spoke truth to my life. And I am here now because of you. And Phil goes, well, he says, I never realized that was going to happen quite that way. I said, I was just doing my Good Samaritan thing and trying to help this guy, and here God radically changed this young man's life. It was a divine appointment that he got stuck, and a divine appointment that Phil stopped to help him. Do you see divine appointments in your world? They're going to be usually inconvenient. They're going to be usually not planned. And I think right now with this time of the year, it is a perfect time. I was looking at some of my stories that I used in 1992. We were having a dinner at our house. We just moved there a year prior to that. And we were having conversation with our 3 boys. And we were having a very invigorating discussion about school. And the 2 older boys were talking about their recess and about math and about relationships at school and that kind of thing. And we were just talking, as families do. And Jim, who's here this morning, was a little 4-year-old. And he says, I'm getting baptized as a 4-year-old. And he just blurted it out. And so rather than let that go, we decided to talk to him about it. So we talked to him about it, and we said, tell me what that means. And I think John asked him, he says, well, are you a Christian? And he said something. He said, well, I don't think you're a Christian. And so Josh, our middle guy, came over to him and did this. We talked about it. What does it mean? And Josh, as a 10-year-old, explained what man's problem was, that you're separated from God, and that the cross of Christ bridges the gap between the two. And he says what you need to do is accept Jesus in your life. And before he got there, he said you have to understand sin because sin is doing things wrong. And so he explained it to him. He said, Jim, have you ever sinned? And Jim goes, yes. He says, and then Josh pointed at himself. He says, do you think I've sinned? He goes, well, yeah. And then he said, what about John? Has John sinned? He goes, yes. And then he pointed at Daddy, and he says, has Daddy sinned? He goes, no. And I felt so good, as a pastor, that my son actually saw that I was perfect, And I said, well, thank you for that vote of confidence, but I actually have sinned too. And so we'd all sinned and fallen short of God's glory, and that we needed God. And so Josh led Jim in a simple little prayer about humbling himself before an almighty God, bowing his knee, believing that Jesus died on the cross for you, died, rose again, one day coming back for you. And Jim prayed that night right there at the dinner table. Now, as a 4-year-old, does he understand all the theology that I preach on and all the tenets of the faith? No. But it was a step toward understanding who God is and making a commitment. And sometimes when they're that young, they have to recommit, because they understand a certain amount. But my point here in this discussion is that we could have skipped right over this while I'm getting baptized, because it was out of context of everything else. And the reason he actually mentioned that he wanted to get baptized is the week before here at church, his 2 older brothers had gotten baptized, and he wanted to be like them. And so rather than blowing through the conversation, we paused and said, tell us about it. And what I'd say to you as parents or grandparents is to have a keen ear to listening to what those divine appointments are. And it's going to be out of context, so it'll be pretty obvious. But take those divine appointments and actually do something with them to say, God, is now the time. Because I think it's very, very significant. Let's go back to the book of John. Start in verse 9. The Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How do you ask me for a drink? For the Jews do not associate with the Samaritans. Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it was that asked you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. How can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his herds? So what they're doing here is Jesus is talking on her level. Talk on their level. You want to think about that when you're talking to people. Don't talk on your level, talk on their level, because you're trying to communicate. So if it's a child, then gear down and talk simple words. Talk about what they're interested in. This woman had come for water, quite frankly. And the living water that she was speaking of is the bubbling water that's down at the bottom where the spring water comes from. And it was cleaner and purer. And she said, how can you get down to the spring water where it bubbles up? How do you do that? So that's what she was thinking about, he was saying. And he was talking about the truth of the living water, about himself and about the words that he spoke, which were the very words of God. And so he took what she was talking and thinking about, and he turned it into a conversation, a spiritual conversation. And it was natural. And he started talking about the living water. She says, I want that living water. What is it? Get some for me. And when you start talking on their level, people respond. Now, you got to be careful that it's clear. I heard a story of a young man who was living the Christian walk at work. And he wanted to make sure that people, he said the right things, and he had the right attitude, and he worked hard, and he was always proper. He never commented negatively about other people, and it was positive. And so he was doing his thing, and he thought it was pretty good until one day a coworker of his came up to him and said, I've been watching you now for a couple of years, and I figured you out. And the Christian's going, okay, what did you figure out? He says, I think you're a vegan. And the Christian goes, a vegan? Yeah, he says, I've been watching you, how you handle yourself and what you eat and how you talk with other people, and I think you're a vegan. And the guy walked away like, no, that's not quite what it is. And I don't know how that conversation went after that, but I just thought that was curious. If you're going to make a point, make sure you make the right point. The fourth bridge is to seek to meet their need. In other words, you're there because that's where they are, and you've got to meet their need. How do you do that? Well, you listen to what they're talking about. If you go to somebody's house, this is so fun. If you're there where someone lives, all you got to do is look at the walls, and you'll see what the pictures are. You'll see if they have pictures of their kids or a place where they've traveled or interesting pieces of of things that they've collected from where they are. And you can learn a lot about people if you just observe and see what are they interested in. And ask them about it. And so you're there. And like in this case, this woman wanted water, and so Jesus was going to take her need for physical water and turn it into her need for spiritual water, everlasting water. Notice she says, where can I get this living water, verse 11? So Jesus continues, verse 13. Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. Whatever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. The woman said, Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. Now, was she fully understanding what he was saying? No. Was Jesus talking about the World Series here, or did he skip into some other la-la land? No. He was intentional about talking to this woman. He was focused, he was targeted, and she was talking about this, and he used that discussion to transfer her over to this discussion and impact her life forever. And with practice, we can all do that. And so that's what he was talking. He says, I'll give you eternal water that will give you eternal life. And she says, I'm in. So watch what he does with her. So she's biting on the discussion here. She's come, give me that so I don't have to keep coming here. And Jesus did verse 16. Go call your husband and come back. Now, what context is that? That has nothing to do with their discussion. But he knew that that was her point of need. Go call your husband and come back. It wasn't just go call your husband. He says, I want you to come back with your husband. And so what does she do? Does she fess up what's going on in her world? No. I have no husband, she replied. Now that should have ended the conversation right there. But Jesus knew her, and he said this. And notice how he words it. I think it's fabulous. He said to her, you are right when you say you have no husband. Did he condemn her right there? Say, you evil woman, you harlot. He didn't say. She was living with a guy. Did he point that out and say, you wrong person, why are you doing that? Don't you know I'm the Messiah? Repent. He didn't do that at all. He could have. In fact, he commends her that she was truthful. You are right when you say you have no husband. In fact, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you are now with is not your husband. What you have said is quite true. That, my friends, is masterful. He was able to speak truth into her life without condemning her. Remember when the woman was brought, she was caught in adultery, and she was brought before Jesus, and he said, you who are without sin, cast the first stone. Remember that little story? And they left by one, starting with the older ones first. And then he picked her up, and he says, where are your accusers? She says, there are none. And he said what? Neither do I accuse you. Go and sin no more. That same talk. It was like he took the situation. He did not condemn her, but he said, here, I'll bring you peace, I'll bring you love, and I will accept where things are. Go and sin no more. So he says, go call your husband. He's putting his finger right on the issue. Now be careful when you do that with people. You don't want to just slam them. You don't want to come across self-righteous. You don't want to do that kind of thing. What you do is you do it with grace, and he did it. He did not condemn her. When I work with people, their lives are messy. And if you work with people, lives become messy. You know what I'm talking about here? So I expect mess. And every now and then, there are some people who are very resistant against the gospel or against Jesus. And they don't. So I'll be talking, and I'll mention something about Jesus, and they say, I don't want to hear anything about Jesus. I don't want to hear any of that. And oftentimes what I'll do, I'll be nice. But I'll say, so how's your life working for you? How's your life working for you? The way you are without Jesus. Is that working for you? And I want you to ponder that as we leave this week. Whether with your friends that you're going to see, your relatives you're going to see, and they're going to start complaining about their life, and I'm going to say, well, how's it working for you? You want to stay there? And that's what the last fill in the blank is. So how's your life working for you? Think about that, my friends. And think about how you don't have to have all the answers, but you have to know where you bring them to. And it's really not you that you're bringing them to. It's you bring them, you take their hand, and you bring them to the cross. That's where we all come. And you help them find comfort and peace there. So I'm going to have you stand up, please, for closing prayer. It was good to study, wasn't it? Father, we thank you for this time that you give to us, a time when we can study the Word of God and realize that you give us divine appointments that you bless us with so that we can influence people for Christ. And I pray for myself and all these wonderful folks here as they go to their family and their friends and their parties, and they have these discussions that are divine appointments. Do you help them see that? Do you help them have the right words to say, the right words not to say? And I pray that they could share Jesus and bend those conversations to have eternal impact on the people that they have. And I pray that there would be great joy in heaven as some of them come to Christ or take another step toward Christ. Empower our people, Lord, to be effective for the kingdom. May we not get caught up in the other stuff that happens, but can we be intentional and purposeful for what we have? We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. It's good to have you all here.